When the building fell, Daniel was brushing his teeth. 1 second, he was standing in a tiny bathroom on the 7th floor, thinking about a boring meeting he had later that day. The next second, the floor disappeared under his feet. The earthquake hit without warning, concrete cracked like dry bones, glass shattered, the entire apartment building folded in on itself as if some invisible hand had crushed it from above. Hundreds of people were buried in the rubble. Most of them died in the first minute. Daniel didn't. He woke up in the dark, pinned under concrete, with the weight of an entire building pressing down on him and no idea if anyone even knew he was still alive. This is how he survived 7 days buried under a collapsed building.
I don't remember the exact moment the shaking started. What I remember is the sound. People think earthquakes are about movement, but the first thing that hits you is noise. A deep, growling roar, like the earth itself is angry. Then everything that can make a sound does. Glass, metal, concrete, human voices. That morning felt normal. I had just turned off the news. There was something about an election, something about markets. I wasn't really listening. I went to the bathroom, toothbrush in my mouth, half awake, thinking about coffee. The first jolt knocked the cup off the sink. Water splashed across the mirror. My toothbrush flew out of my hand. I grabbed the edge of the sink on instinct. Then the real shaking began. The lights went out. Tiles fell off the wall. Somewhere in the apartment, a cabinet crashed to the floor. I heard someone in the hallway scream. I've been through small earthquakes before. You wait a few seconds, it stops, you laugh nervously, you go back to what you were doing. This wasn't like that. The floor bucked under my feet, then dropped. I remember hitting the door frame. I remember my shoulder exploding with pain. I remember the wall in front of me folding like paper. Then I was falling. The sound of the building collapsing is something my brain still hasn't fully accepted. It was metal screaming and concrete grinding and glass shattering all at once, mixed with the sound of people. Too many people, crying out in surprise, in fear, in pain. There was no time to think, this is it. The ceiling came down. The world turned into dust and darkness. And then suddenly silence. At first I thought I had gone deaf. The quiet was so complete it didn't feel real. No traffic, no voices, no humming refrigerator. Just the slow, high-pitched ringing in my ears. I tried to move. Pain lit up my body like fire. My right arm was pinned by something heavy. A slab of concrete, I guessed. My left leg was trapped at an angle that didn't feel natural. There was weight on my chest, a beam or part of a wall, making every breath feel like I was trying to inhale with a car parked on my ribs. I couldn't see anything. It was black, not lights off dark, not middle of the night dark. This was different. This was buried deep underground dark. I opened my mouth to call out and sucked in dust. Coated my tongue, my throat, my lungs. I coughed until my chest burned and white sparks danced in front of the nothing I was seeing. Hello, I managed eventually. My voice sounded small. Wrong. No one answered. For a long time, minutes, hours, I don't know. I just lay there listening to my own breathing. In shallow because anything deeper hurt too much. Little by little, my brain came back online. Earthquake. The building. The bathroom. The fall. Am I dead? I actually asked myself that question. Lying there in the dark, it didn't feel impossible. Then I felt the throbbing in my shoulder, the stabbing pain in my trapped leg, the pounding in my skull. No, not dead. Not yet. Shock is a strange thing. Part of me wanted to scream, to thrash, to fight the rubble holding me down. Another part of me was very calm, almost detached, like I was watching this happen to someone else. That calm voice said, "Panicking will waste oxygen. Don't do that." I didn't know how much air I had. That thought dug icy fingers into my spine. I tried to move my free hand. Took effort, but I could slide it a little along the ground, or what I thought was the ground. My fingertips found rough concrete, smooth tile, shattered glass. Slowly, very slowly, shapes began to appear in my mind. My head was turned sideways, one cheek pressed against cold tile. That meant part of the bathroom floor had survived, around my head at least. The thing on my chest was angled diagonally. A fallen wall? A beam? Whatever it was, it had stopped something worse from crushing me completely. Space. I had a pocket of space. Tiny, crooked, full of dust and broken things, but a pocket where my lungs could still move, where my heart could still beat. I realized something else. I could move the fingers on my trapped arm. I couldn't pull the arm free, but I could feel them. Good news. Not crushed completely. Bad news. Nerves screaming with every attempt. I tested my toes next. Agony shot up my legs so fast I bit down on my lip to stop from yelling. Warmth spread across my shin. For a terror-filled second I thought it was something from outside, water or worse, but no. It was inside. Blood. Okay? I whispered to myself, my own voice sounding distant in the darkness. Checklist. Can I breathe? Yes. Can I move anything? A little. Am I alone? That last question hung in the air. Hello? I tried again, louder this time. Silence. Is anyone there? For a few heartbeats, nothing. And then, faintly, through layers of concrete and steel, I heard it. A voice. Crying. Calling a name I didn't recognize. I wasn't the only one still alive down here. Somehow, that made everything both better and worse. Time doesn't work the same way when you're buried. There's no sun to tell you if it's morning or evening. No clock, no phone screen, no footsteps in the hallway. Just your own body and the sounds that filter through the layers of rubble. At some point, far above me, I heard sirens. It was like listening to a city I no longer belonged to. Distant, echoing, distorted. Maybe an ambulance. Maybe a fire truck. Maybe all of them. A strange, ridiculous thought popped into my head. They're here for us. Whoever they were. Rescuers. Firefighters. Strangers who had decided that digging through broken concrete for people they'd never met was worth their time. Their energy. Their safety. I tried to shout. Help! I'm here! My voice bounced back at me, absorbed by dust and broken walls. I coughed instead. Useless. My throat felt like sandpaper. I swallowed and realized, with a jolt of fear, that my mouth was dry. How long had it been since the building fell? An hour? 2? I had no idea. Thirst, I remembered from some survival show I'd once watched, doesn't kill you in a few hours. Lack of oxygen does. Bleeding out does. Collapsed lung does. I focused on my breathing. In. Slow. Shallow, because anything deeper sent knives through my ribs. The voices I had heard earlier faded. Either they stopped calling, or the sound no longer reached my little pocket of space. For a while, it was just me and the dark. I don't know when I started talking to myself. Maybe it was an instinct. Humans aren't meant to be alone in the dark like that. Our minds reach for company, even if it's our own voice bouncing back off unseen walls. Okay, Daniel, I whispered. You need a plan. The word plan felt ridiculous. What kind of plan do you make when you're literally under a building? Still, it gave my brain something to grab onto. First, stay calm. Second, conserve energy. Third, make noise when there's a chance someone can hear. How do I know when that is? I muttered. As if in answer, a new sound reached me. A deep, rhythmic thumping. Metal on concrete. Heavy machinery, maybe. They were digging. Hope flared so bright it almost hurt. I took a breath, ignored the pain, and screamed. I'm here. Help. I'm still alive. The effort sent white-hot lances through my chest. My vision, what little of it there was, sparkled with black spots. I coughed, choked on dust, wheezed. The noise above continued, steady, uncaring. Did they hear me? I had no way of knowing. I tried again, weaker this time. Here. I'm here. Silence answered. Eventually, the thumping stopped. For the first time, a real, sharp thought cut through everything else. What if they never find me? At some point, I slept. or passed out. There isn't much difference when you're in that much pain. One moment I was staring into the darkness. The next I was jerked awake by a sound right next to my ear. Drip. For a second I thought I was imagining it. Drip. A tiny, clear sound. Water falling from somewhere above onto tile. My heart kicked into a higher gear. Very slowly, ignoring the protests from my arm and leg, I inched my free hand across the ground. My fingertips brushed over dust, grit, a shard of glass. I flinched, adjusted, kept going. Cold. A small, cold circle of wetness under my fingers. I almost cried. I cupped my hand and waited. Drip. The drop hit my palm. I lifted my hand to my mouth, guided more by memory than sight, and tasted it. Dust, cement, rust, but also water. I waited again, and again. Each drop took long seconds to fall, but eventually I found a rhythm. Wait, catch, drink. It wasn't much. It wouldn't be enough forever, but it was something. Thank you, I whispered, not sure if I was talking to the building, the broken pipe above me, or whatever cruel universe had decided to trap me here, but still drip-feed me life. The pain became a kind of background noise. My shoulder throbbed. My leg burned. My ribs complained every time my lungs dared to do their job. But the human brain is good at getting used to awful things. What it's not good at is silence. Sometimes I heard things. Muffled voices, too far away for words. The whine of machines. Once, I was almost sure I heard a dog barking, faint and urgent. Search dogs, I thought. They're looking for us. I banged my free hand against the nearest hard surface. It sounded pathetic. A dull, sad thud in a world made of heavier sounds. I tried anyway. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. Pause. Somewhere, a rescuer might hear a pattern and think, that's not debris. That's a person. Or maybe they wouldn't. Time blurred. My stomach cramped. I thought about food. The cereal I'd meant to eat that morning. The vending machine at the office. The sandwich place on the corner. I tried to stop. Thinking about food when you're trapped with none of it is a special kind of torture. Thirst was worse. Even with the dripping water, my body craved more. My tongue felt too big for my mouth. My lips cracked. But the real enemy wasn't hunger, or thirst, or even pain. It was the voice that whispered, in the back of my mind, no one knows you're here. You're going to die in the dark, and they'll never find you. I fought that voice with memories. Sitting at my mother's kitchen table, laughing at something stupid my brother had said. The way my father clapped me on the shoulder when I told him I'd gotten my first real job. A friend's wedding with bad music and good cake. Little, ordinary moments. I pictured them like lights, tiny but stubborn, in the suffocating dark. You don't get to die here, I told myself. Not like this. Not under tile and concrete, with your toothbrush still on the sink somewhere above your head. It sounded absurd. It also sounded necessary. I didn't know it yet, but that stubborn, almost ridiculous refusal to accept my own death was going to be the thin line between making it out and becoming just another name on a list. On what I later learned was the 4th day, I started to lose track of what was real. I heard my mother's voice clearly, as if she were leaning over me, brushing dust from my hair. Daniel, she said gently. Wake up, Carino. You have to wake up. I opened my eyes, though they had never really been closed, not in any meaningful way, and saw nothing. Just the same blackness pressing in from all sides. Water, I whispered. I need water. Then reach for it, her voice said. I groped for the dripping spot. For a terrifying second, I couldn't find it. Panic surged, big and choking. Then drip. My hand was in the right place after all. My mother's voice faded. Hallucination. Memory. Some part of my brain pretending she was there because it knew I needed her to be. It didn't matter. What mattered was that it kept me focused on the only thing I could actually do. Breathe. Drink when I could. Save my strength. Make noise when I heard something that sounded like hope. The first time I heard them clearly, I thought I was dreaming again. Quiet. Quiet. The shout was muffled, but sharper than anything I'd heard before. The sound of machinery stopped. The silence that followed felt heavy, expectant. I held my breath without meaning to. Listen. Another voice. Closer, maybe. There. Did you hear that? I hadn't heard anything. Until that moment. Faint, rhythmic tapping. Not mine. Somewhere under or above or beside me, another trapped person was knocking. I wanted to answer. My hand felt like it weighed 100 kilos, but I lifted it anyway and smacked it against the tile as hard as I could. Once, twice, 3 times. Here, I croaked, knowing they couldn't hear the word but hoping they might hear the sound. There was a pause. Then, through who knows how many layers of concrete, I heard it. A dog, barking. Short, urgent barks. The kind I'd heard once in a documentary about search and rescue teams. Tears filled my eyes. I'm here, I whispered. I'm here. Please, don't give up. The next hours, or was it the next day, were a blur of noises. Metal scraping against concrete. Rocks shifting. Occasional shouts. Commands thrown back and forth. The barking dog on and off like a living echo. Sometimes, everything went quiet again, and I felt my fragile hope sink. They're moving to another section, the dark voice inside me said. They think there's no one here. But then the noise would start again, closer this time. Dust rained down on my face. Tiny pebbles bounced off my forehead. The weight on my chest pressed down harder for a terrifying moment, as if the whole structure was thinking about collapsing further. I tried not to panic. If it didn't crush you in the first second, I told myself, it's not going to crush you now. Probably. Probably wasn't comforting. Still, I clung to it. At some point, a new sound cut through everything. A knock. Clear. Deliberate. Right above me. My heart hammered so hard it hurt. If you can hear me, knock 3 times. A voice shouted. Distorted but unmistakable. My hand shook. My shoulder burned. I ignored it. 1, 2, 3. I hit the tile as hard as I could. For a second, nothing. Then a shout. We've got one. There's someone alive here. I laughed. Or sobbed. Came out as a broken, ugly sound. Half joy, half exhaustion. After that, time sped up and slowed down at the same time. They worked above me, breaking concrete in careful, measured strikes. I could hear their tools. I could hear them talking to each other, sometimes joking in that strange, forced way people do when they're scared but need to keep moving. They talked to me, too. Hey, you down there? Can you hear us? Yes, I rasped. I'm here. What's your name? Daniel. How long have you been down there, Daniel? I thought about it. Tried to count sleeps, drips, changes in noise. Gave up. Too long, I said, and one of them laughed. A short, disbelieving sound that somehow made everything feel more real. Okay, Daniel, we're gonna get you out, but it's gonna take time. Don't move if you can help it. Save your strength. As if I had the option to move. Still, the reassurance helped. I wasn't just a sound anymore. I was a person to them. A name. A reason to keep digging. The first shaft of light that reached me wasn't cinematic. It was a thin, dusty beam, sneaking through a crack above my head. It lit up floating particles in the air, turning the dust into tiny, glittering stars. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Daniel, someone called. Closer now. We're about 20 minutes out. How are you doing? Thirsty, I said honestly. And tired. Hang in there. We're almost with you. 20 minutes turned into an hour. Or maybe it was 10 minutes and just felt like longer. My sense of time was so broken it hardly mattered. But then, finally, something shifted above me with a heavy clunk. The weight on my chest lessened. Hands reached through the darkness. A gloved hand brushed my shoulder, my cheek. I've got him, a voice shouted. He's here. He's breathing. Someone placed an oxygen mask over my face. Cool air rushed into my lungs. Shocking and wonderful. Nice to meet you, Daniel, the rescuer's voice said, much closer now, almost in my ear. We've been looking for you. I wanted to say, thanks for not giving up. But all that came out was a hoarse, mangled thank you. The actual extraction was slow. They had to cut pieces of concrete, shift beams, brace everything so the void I'd been living in didn't become my tomb at the last second. Every jolt sent fresh pain through my leg and shoulder. But none of it mattered. They were there. They were talking to me, telling me what they were doing, asking me about stupid everyday things, what kind of music I liked, what I did for work, if I had anyone waiting for me outside. I realized, with a jolt of guilt and then relief, that I did. My mother, my brother, friends, they were out there somewhere hoping for a miracle. For the first time, I allowed myself to believe I might actually see them again. When they finally pulled me free, the world was too bright. After days in darkness, even the overcast sky felt like staring into the sun. I squinted, blinking against the light, tears streaming down my dirty face. The air smelled different up there. Smoke, dust, sweat, but also something else. Life. People clapped. I heard someone cheer. A camera shutter clicked over and over. Hands supported my neck, my back, my broken leg. Someone asked me something for the news. I don't remember what I said. Probably nothing clever. Nothing profound. I remember one thing clearly, though. As they lifted me onto a stretcher and started carrying me away from the twisted pile of concrete and steel that had been my world for 7 days, I turned my head, as much as the collar would allow, and whispered to no one in particular. I thought I was going to die down there. A rescuer walking beside me heard. But you didn't, he said, simple and firm. You didn't. Later, in a hospital bed with white sheets and beeping machines, people would call it a miracle. They would talk about odds and statistics, about how long a person can survive without food, with limited water, with injuries like mine. They would tell me how many others hadn't made it out. I would think about the dripping pipe, about the tiny pocket of space that had been just big enough for my lungs to work, about the dog that barked at the right moment, about the rescuers who refused to assume everyone under the rubble was already dead. But most of all, I would think about that voice in my head, the one that kept saying, not like this. You don't get to die like this. I'm not stronger than anyone else. I'm not braver. I was scared. I was in pain. I wanted to give up more than once. I just didn't. In the end, my survival wasn't about heroics. It was about hanging on one breath at a time, in a place where no one is meant to live. 7 days buried alive under a building. 7 days of darkness, dust, and doubt. And then, finally, light.
Most of us will never spend 7 days buried under a building, but all of us at some point get trapped under something we can't control, a diagnosis, a loss, a debt, a mistake that seems too heavy to ever lift. In those moments, it's easy to believe the dark voice that whispers, "This is where it ends." Daniel's story is not about superhuman strength. It's about something much simpler and much harder, refusing to let that voice decide. He survived by holding on to tiny things, one breath, one drop of water, one faint sound of hope above the rubble. And that's what most survival really is, not a sudden miracle, not a heroic speech, just the quiet decision, over and over again, in the darkest place you've ever been, not like this, not today.